What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time to give you my 2024 SEC football spring power rankings for the upcoming 2024 college football season. So spring practices are officially completed, and also spring football games are completed for all these college football teams. So with that being said, with the spring coming down to an end, we're going to give you my updated power rankings here for the spring. We did this kind of way back in the month of January, where we did some way too early power rankings for all the power forwards conferences. Now we're going to give you my updated power rankings here for the spring. This is going to be based off of what the teams have coming back this year for 2024, and kind of based off of the schedules as well. We did preview all these teams' schedules for 2024 and gave them an early projected record to see how good each and every single team will actually be. So we're going to start here with the SEC. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way to the top. So let's go ahead and get right into this list, and I should say these power rankings here for the SEC for the spring. So we start here at the bottom. So we start with number 16. It's obviously Vanderbilt, probably predicted to be the worst team in the SEC and probably projected as well to be the worst team in the SEC. And you look at their schedule, it's not really just about the roster. Well, it really is, because they don't have the talent on the roster, even though they do bring back a decent amount of production from last year's team. But again, you know, this is a Vanderbilt team that just doesn't have the roster talent, and you just look at their schedule. That schedule obviously going to be very tough for them to get an SEC win, because they have to play like almost all the top teams in the SEC coming up this year. They got to play Alabama, they got to play Texas, they got to play Missouri, they got to play Tennessee. They don't have to play Georgia or Ole Miss, which I think is really good news. But again, the schedule is the reason why I think Vanderbilt will definitely be the worst team in the SEC this year, and also just because of their roster as well. So Vanderbilt here at number 16, no surprise in the spring power rankings here for 2024. Number 15 is Mississippi State. Obviously a first-year head coach. We don't know how good this team is actually going to be, but you just look at this roster. Still a lot of production and a lot of roster turnover here for this team for 2024. You look at the offensive side of the football, they're going to lose Will Rogers at quarterback. I mean, they're going to have to replace him at quarterback. That's obviously going to be a big loss there in the passing game. And then defensively, they are going to lose a ton of production on that side of the football, either from the transfer portal or maybe due to graduation as well, or maybe some guys go into the NFL. But you just look at that roster on the defensive side of the football, they're not going to have a ton of depth on the defensive side of the football. They only return about 27% of their production on the defensive side of the football. So yeah, that defense is going to be very young. Overall, this is going to be a very young Mississippi State team as well. So they also have a very tough schedule, just like Vanderbilt. It's going to be very hard for them to get an SEC win as well, but they do have some games on there where I think Mississippi State can at least win 1 or 2 games in the SEC. So we'll see how that goes here for the first-year head coach, but this is definitely a very young team this year heading into 2024. That's why they're so far here on this list at number 15, or I should say really far back on this list here at number 15. Number 14 is Arkansas. Arkansas had a pretty rough year last year, going just 4-8. They had a very tough schedule last year. They have a tougher schedule once again for 2024. You look at the roster, you're going to lose KJ Jefferson at quarterback on the offensive side of the football. So they're going to have a change there at quarterback. They're going to have to replace KJ Jefferson. That's obviously going to be a huge loss there. But you look at the defensive side of the football. That's where I'm concerned about the most here for the Razorbacks. They only return about 41% of their production on the defensive side of the football. So Arkansas probably could be a really bad defensive team. I'm not saying they're going to be bad as a whole team, but when you look at their schedule for 2024, that's obviously the reason why I think Arkansas could probably have a rough season. But if they do make it to a bowl game, that would definitely be a very big accomplishment, especially going just 4-8 last year. But again, this is a team that has a lot of question marks on the defensive side of the football. So the Razorbacks here at number 14. Number 13 is Florida. It's kind of hard to figure out how good Florida is going to be, especially with the returning production that they have coming back this year. They do have a decent amount of production on the offensive side of the football coming back this year. Graham Mertz will be back at quarterback. We'll see how much he has improved ever since last season. I think he'll be a little bit better this year and more accurate with his throwing. But you just look at the schedule for Florida. That's a very tough schedule this year for them. They have one of the toughest schedules in the SEC. And like I said, they have one of the toughest schedules in the country as well. When we did our top 10 schedules video for the top 10 toughest schedules, Florida ended up being at number 1. And you just look at that schedule. having to play Miami, Florida State, and UCF, 3 Power 4 teams in the non-conference, that is especially going to be very tough here for this Florida team. And it's not really just the non-conference schedule, it's more about the conference schedule as well. When you look at that conference schedule, they have to play Tennessee, they have to play Ole Miss, they have to play LSU, they also have to play Georgia, and they also got to play Texas on the road as well. So again, it's not really just about the roster here for Florida. That's the reason why they're here at number 13. It's not really just about the roster. It's more about the schedule for them. So with that kind of schedule, it could be another rough season for Florida. Not saying they're going to be very bad. I think this is a very talented Florida team. But again, based on their schedule, that's the reason why they ended up here at number 13 in these power rankings here for the spring. All right, number 12 is South Carolina. South Carolina going to lose Spencer Rattler at quarterback. That's going to be definitely a huge loss there for the Gamecocks, but they'll replace him. I think they'll be pretty much fine on that quarterback spot, but the offensive side of the football, they're going to be pretty young this year. But defensively, they got almost everybody coming back. Decent amount of production on the defensive side of the football coming back this year. So I think South Carolina actually might be a good defensive team, but again, it's going to come down to their offense and everything. If they can score some points and their defense makes the right stops, South Carolina actually could have a better season and probably win like 8 games like they did in 2022. But you look at their schedule this year, it's a pretty tough schedule. Once again, it's going to be very hard for South Carolina to make it to a bowl game just because of that schedule there for 2024. But again, the roster wise, again, the quarterback position, it's going to come down to the quarterback position. Spencer Rattler again gone for 2024, so they got to replace him, and the offense overall is going to be pretty young. But the defense, I think, should be pretty good for South Carolina. They got a decent amount of production coming back there. So I think South Carolina might actually be a really good defensive team for 2024. All right, number 11 is Texas A&M. Texas A&M also just like Mississippi State with a first-year head coach, but I think the Aggies might actually be better than Mississippi State, way better also than Vanderbilt, and also way better than Florida. This team has a lot of production coming back this year. They have the most production coming back in the SEC overall, and they also have a very good amount of production coming back on the offensive side of the football. They got options at quarterback. They should be really good on the offensive side of the football, and then defensively, they were one of the top defenses in the country last year. I think that defense might take a step back from where they were the year before. They lost some key guys on the defensive side of the football, but this Texas A&M team might be underrated heading into 2024. I think a lot of people are definitely like really low on this Texas A&M team, even though they're going to have a first-year head coach. I think Texas A&M has a chance to be pretty solid for 2024. So again, you look at the returning production, offensive side of the football, they should be pretty good. Defensively, I think they'll still be pretty good, but it's going to be probably a step back from where they were the year before. So Texas A&M here at number 11. Number 10 is Kentucky. Kentucky comes in here, this year with a new offensive coordinator. They brought in some transfers to help them out. They did lose a lot on the offensive side of the football, lost a lot of key guys, including Ray Davis and Devin Leary at quarterback and running back, but they reloaded, obviously, in the transfer portal. That was the best thing that Kentucky did this year is they brought in some transfers from some really good Power 4 football programs from either the Big Ten or the SEC, and also some players from the Group of 5 level. They also brought in some transfers at the wide receiver position. Brock Vandergrift, the transfer quarterback from Georgia. How good will he be? We don't really know the answer to that question until he gets on the field, but they're going to have a new offensive coordinator. The passing game was a big struggle last year for Kentucky, so we'll see if the passing game can definitely improve a little bit for Kentucky this year. You look at the defensive side of the football, they lost really good players there, but they do got some incoming transfers to help them out on the defensive side of the football. And I think they returned their top defensive lineman on that side of the football as well. So I think Kentucky will be a very consistent team. I think they'll be right there somewhere around 6, 7, 8 win type team or something like that. They could potentially be a top 25 team as well, but their conference schedule is pretty tough this year. We'll see how good they're actually going to be. So Kentucky here at number 10. Number 9 is Auburn. You look at this team, they do return about a decent amount of production on the offensive side of the football. I think the offense will have a chance to probably score a lot of points this year. You look at the defensive side of the football, they're going to lose quite a lot of talent talent on that side of the football from last year. But we know how Hugh Freeze is. He's a pretty good recruiter out of the transfer portal, and he also brought in maybe some freshmen to help them out. I think the future is definitely looking bright for Auburn as of right now. They're here at number 9 on this list. I think, with the season that they had from last year where they competed against Georgia and Alabama, they definitely could really, I think I could see the future definitely looking bright here for Auburn. So Auburn here at number 9 on these power rankings here for the spring. Number 8 is Oklahoma. You look at Oklahoma first year in the SEC, of course. You look at their roster. They're going to lose a lot of production on the offensive side of the football. This was a very good offensive team last year, but this year might be a little bit of a step back from where they were the year before. They're obviously going to have a new quarterback, not Spencer Rattler. He was gone from a long time ago, but you look at Dylan Gabriel. He's gone. He entered the transfer portal to Oregon, so that's going to be a huge loss there at quarterback. So they're going to have a new quarterback this year for 2020. And then you look at the defensive side of the football. They're definitely going to be very good on that side of the football. Brent Valuables knows how to get it done there as a defensive guy there for this Oklahoma team. And like I said, I think defensively Oklahoma would be pretty dominant on that side of the football this year. But offensively, that's going to be definitely a big concern here for the Sooners. Again, a lot of production lost on that side of the football and a lot of talent gone from that side of the football this year as well. But Oklahoma, I think this is still a very talented team that they can probably win 7 or 8 games. But again, their schedule is pretty tough as well, so that's the reason why they're not really in the top 5 this year instead of being outside the top 10. So Oklahoma here at number 8, we'll see how they do in their first year in the SEC. And then number 7 is Tennessee. Tennessee comes in here, a lot of roster gone for them on the offensive side of the football, especially on the offensive line. They lose Joe Milton at quarterback. They also lose Jabari Small and also Jalen Wright at running back. But, I think Tennessee will be a really good team on the offensive side of the football. The offense is definitely going to be a lot different this year with all these new players stepping in, but they got some depth at wide receiver. They do got some transfers coming in to help them out. Josh Heupel has done a pretty nice job in the transfer portal throughout his 3 years, so he knows what it takes to get really good guys on the offensive side of the football. But you look at the defense, I think Tennessee has a pretty good chance to be a good defensive team this year. We did see the defense a little bit, really better from last season based off of the first 2 years for Josh Heupel. Defensively, they do bring in some transfers to help them out. I think the linebacker position on the defensive side of the football is definitely going to be probably the biggest strength for this Tennessee defense this year. So Tennessee might actually be a really good defensive team. But again, I'm not too concerned about the offense for Tennessee. I think I'm definitely not really concerned about any sides of the football for the Tennessee Volunteers, but I think offensively they're going to be pretty young on that side of the football, but I think they'll still score some points and definitely be a very explosive offense. So Tennessee here at number 7, and then number 6 is Missouri. So Missouri coming off a bit of a surprise last year. Did not expect them to win 11 games. Will this be the same Missouri team that we saw last year? I think so. You're going to have Brady Cook back at quarterback. You also got your top wide receiver returning back from last year. And also, you got a really good amount of production coming back on the offensive side of the football. You look at the defense, though. I mean, they're going to lose quite a lot of talent from last year's team, but I think the defense will be okay. That's obviously a big concern here for Missouri, but I think offensive side of the football, they should be able to score some points, and I think Brady Cook will definitely be very consistent. And again, they're going to return their top wide receiver, but they're going to lose their top running back, but they do have some options at running back. So watch out here for the Missouri Tigers. They also have a very easy schedule, and they have the easiest schedule for 2024 in the SEC. So Missouri here at number 6. And then number 5 is Ole Miss. Ole Miss comes in here with high expectations for 2024. Jackson Dart, of course, will be back at quarterback. You look at the offensive side of the football. I mean, obviously, they have a decent amount of production coming back there, but they also have some transfers coming in to help them out on the offensive side of football. They'll definitely lose a really good running back in Judkins, but I'm not really too concerned about the offensive side of the football. I'm definitely concerned about the defense for Ole Miss, though. That defense just has not been able to get things going here for Lane Kiffin in his first few years, but hopefully they can turn around this year. They did bring in some transfers to help them out, and I think with that being said, I think Ole Miss definitely has a chance to be a playoff contender this year. And again, a lot of production coming back this year on the offensive side of the football. Again, that offense is going to be very explosive. They definitely should be able to score like 30 points per game this year. So Ole Miss here at number 5. Number 4 is Alabama. Alabama comes in here, first-year head coach, obviously, Kalen DeBoer now taking over. This is not going to be the same Alabama team that we saw like under Nick Saban over the years. You just look at the roster, they're going to return about a decent amount of production on the offensive side of the football, but you got Jalen Milroe back at quarterback. That's obviously a huge return, but they lost some guys on the offensive side of the football, either from the transfer portal. They also lost some incoming recruits, but they lost a ton of production on the defensive side of the football. That defense has a lot of question marks. They only returned about 33% on the defensive side of the football from last year's team, and they lost a ton of guys from the transfer portal or from the NFL draft, so this defense will be definitely a lot different here. It's not going to be the same dominant defense that we saw with Alabama over the years. I think offensively they'll be okay there. I think this will probably be an explosive offensive team. I think, with Kalen DeBoer taking over, they should be really good on the offensive side of the football. I like how he was at Washington. So, again, defensively is what I'm concerned about here for the Crimson Tide, but they're still here in the top 5 either way just because they're Alabama. So they're here at number 4. And then number 3 is LSU. LSU, I think, is a team that everybody is probably sleeping on this year. They got options at quarterback. They're obviously going to lose Jaden Daniels. That's obviously a big loss there. They also lost some key players on the offensive side of the football as well besides quarterback from last season. But you know how Brian Kelly is. He does reload from the transfer portal, so he does have some incoming transfers to help them out. And then defensively, I think that's where they're going to be probably solid on that side of the football. The defense was definitely a lot worse than we didn't really expect for LSU last year, but hopefully they can get that defense turned around. And I also think they have a new offensive coordinator. So LSU, I think this is a team that's definitely underrated heading into 2024. We'll see if they can have a pretty good season, and that's why they're here at number 3 with the returning production that they have coming back on the defensive side of the football. And, of course, the transfers that they brought in. Number 2 is Texas. Texas comes in here at number 2. This team does return a lot of production on the offensive side of the football this year. Quinn Ewers will be back at quarterback. That's obviously going to be the big return there at the quarterback position. But I tell you what, when you look at the spring game for Texas, I know Quinn Ewers is going to be the starting quarterback, but you look at Arch Manning, he was very phenomenal in that spring game. But they do got options with him at quarterback, and they also got Quinn Ewers to go with him. But I feel like Quinn Ewers will definitely be the starter. I think he is definitely more accurate than Arch Manning is. But again, Texas, this is a team that does return a good amount of production on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, I think they'll be okay there as well. Steve Sarkisian knows how to get it done on the offensive side of the football, though. So I think Texas will be a very explosive offense for 2024, once again, like they were from last year. And this is also their first year in the SEC, so we'll see how they do for 2024. And then, obviously, number 1, you probably already know who that is, and that number 1 team is definitely going to be Georgia. So, Georgia is still my pick to win the SEC championship and probably the favorite to win the national championship. But when you look at my way too early rankings back in the month of January, I had actually Alabama at number 1 based off of, last year, Alabama winning the SEC championship against Georgia. But that was, of course, before Nick Saban retired. But now with him gone, Georgia definitely is currently the top team heading into 2024. And you just look at the roster, they bring back a ton of production on the offensive side of the football, 76% overall production on the offensive side of the football. Carson Beck, of course, will be back at quarterback. Probably one of the top quarterbacks heading into the SEC next year. And again, this could be a very explosive offensive team like they were from last year. And again, they do bring back a lot of talent on that offensive side of the football. Defensively, lost some key guys on the defensive side of the football, but they'll be okay there. They should have plenty of depth at the defensive side of the football. We know how Kirby Smart is with his recruits. He'll have some freshmen playing in there, and also some former 5-stars that didn't get to play last year. So Georgia here at number 1 in these spring power rankings here for 2024. And those are my 2024 SEC football spring power rankings for the 2024 college football season. Let me guys know what you think about these spring power rankings here for the SEC. Do you agree or disagree? Give me your power rankings for the SEC down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.